government prepares the next phase of economic strengthening. Administrative EMCO in Amanjaya, Kedah, effective midnight. Thanks for joining us here on News at 10. I'm Brendan Nepal. The next phase of planning for the economic strengthening has begun and will be presented in Belanjawan 2021. In a statement by Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz, he informed that the government is confident that the initiatives taken via the Prihatin Economic Stimulus Package and Penjana Economic Recovery Plan have proven to have positive effects on recovery efforts. Meanwhile, teams from the Ministry of Finance have continued the Jelajah Belanjawan 2021 series to Johor and Pahang to gather feedback on the economic recovery package initiatives. The ministry also conducted engagement sessions with industry players and representatives from various sectors such as education, pharmaceuticals, agro industries and female SME entrepreneurs to obtain their views and needs. The Finance Minister added that the government welcomes feedback from all levels of society, of which any suggestions can be submitted to the Belanjawan 2021 website until 15 September. On another note, Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul also informed that the moratorium on loan repayment by financial institution is estimated to be worth 74.3 billion ringgit as of 14 August. Now, from that amount, 26 billion ringgit was utilised by the business sector and 48.3 billion ringgit was used by the rakyat. The moratorium, which came into effect on the 1st of April, will end on 30th September. Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul also urged those affected not to wait until the last minute to contact their respective banking institutions to discuss repayment options. He also said that in order to support the nation's economic recovery, a strong banking system is essential to provide financing to businesses and households, in addition to always being prepared for any future possibilities and uncertainties. Furthermore, the banking industry is also obliged to pay profit for the customers' savings. On the disclosure of the list of 101 direct negotiation projects, Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul reiterated that it was released in the interest of transparency. He also stressed that the issue should not be politicised.
List itu adalah berdasarkan fakta. Ia bukannya berdasarkan siapa yang negotiate bila dia sign. Tapi kalau kita lihat betul-betul, itulah daftar dan fakta yang ada yang menunjukkan LOA ataupun letter of award yang disign pada masa itu, ya, pada masa Pakatan Harapan.
He said there is nothing wrong in conducting direct negotiations for projects under Section 6, Subsection 1 of the Financial Procedure Act 1957, revised 1972. As Malaysia transition. 5 new COVID-19 cases were recorded today, bringing the total number of positive cases in Malaysia to 9,296. Meanwhile, 16 cases made a recovery and was discharged, bringing the number of recovered cases up to 8,000, which is 96.8% of the total positive cases. Health Director General Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham Abdullah said 2 of the new cases today were import cases involving Malaysians who contracted the virus from Egypt and the Philippines. The remaining 3 cases were locally transmitted and were recorded in Malacca.
2 kes saringan sebelum menjalani pembedahan di Hospital Angkatan Tentera Malaysia di kamp terendah di Melaka dan 1 kes saringan bergejala iaitu batuk dan sakit tekak juga di Hospital Angkatan Tentera kamp terendah di Melaka.
Currently, there are 8 positive cases being treated in intensive care units ICU, with 6 of them requiring respiratory aid. No new deaths were recorded today, and the COVID-19 death toll remains at 125. Meanwhile, Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham said the Tawa and Siwa Ganga clusters are likely to be linked. He said this follows after the Health Ministry found matches between the samples taken from both clusters, which showed that the Tawa cluster also has the D164G mutation.
Virus kluster Tawa ini, iaitu 4 sampel telah dibandingkan dengan virus kluster PUI Siwa Ganga, iaitu 3 sampel. Hasil menunjukkan bahawa ketujuh-tujuh virus ini adalah daripada kumpulan yang sama. Ini mencadangkan bahawa kluster Tawa dan kluster PUI Siwa Ganga adalah kemungkinan besar daripada sumber yang sama.
Investigation is still ongoing. An Enforced Movement Control Order (EMCO) will be implemented in Aman Jaya Kedah effective midnight tonight. Senior Minister for Defence Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said the implementation was decided during the special cabinet meeting. Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri said the EMCO will be active until a specified date to be announced by the Ministry of Health. Speaking in a media conference at the Parliament, Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri also informed that it will involve 3 zones in Aman Jaya, which are Kenanga, Mawa and Melo, affecting 22,360 residents. Residents are not allowed to leave the specified zones even for work purposes, and entry to these 3 areas are also forbidden. Entry and exits are only allowed in the events of death or requirement for medical treatment.
Jadi saya berharap saya memberi ingatan kepada majikan-majikan. Jika pekerja mereka tidak datang bekerja kerana sekatan yang dikenakan oleh kajian ini, supaya tidak mengambil sebarang tindakan kepada pekerja-pekerja mereka. Sama ada yang di dalam PKPD yang tak boleh keluar ataupun yang di luar tak boleh masuk, saya harap majikan tidak mengambil sebarang tindakan kerana ini adalah perintah daripada kerajaan yang menyebabkan mereka tidak boleh keluar bekerja. Walaupun kita galakkan pekerja-pekerja tersebut bersama majikan mereka boleh bincang untuk membuat kerja daripada rumah dan sebagainya.
Restaurants and eateries are allowed to operate from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m, but only for takeaway. Also allowed to operate are petrol stations, grocery stores, pharmacies and drugstores. Clinics and hospitals are permitted to operate for 24 hours a day, while public spaces, mosques, places of worship and educational institutes are ordered to close for the duration of the EMCO. Night markets and farmers' markets are not allowed, except daily markets which are permitted to open from 6 a.m. until 2 p.m. Today's special meeting have decided that the operating hours for all business premises, including 24-hour convenience stores, will only be allowed open until 12 midnight. However, private clinics are allowed to open 24 hours. Senior Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob, however, said that clinics need to adhere to the SOP set, including the use of the My Sejahtera application.
Saya tak tahu keliru atau tidak ya tentang waktu operasi bagi premis perniagaan. Kita dah umumkan, saya dah umumkan bahawa waktu operasi premis perniagaan hanya sehingga pukul 12 malam sahaja. Jadi didapati ada premis-premis yang beroperasi sehingga 24 jam. Seperti kedai serba nikah 24 jam. Kedai serba nikah 24 jam, didapati ada yang menjalankan operasi sehingga 24 jam. Mungkin saya tidak tahu kenapa mereka buka. Mungkin mereka mendapat kebenaran daripada PBT. Jadi saya nak tekankan sekali lagi bahawa semua premis perniagaan hanya dibenarkan dibuka sehingga pukul 12 malam sahaja dan tidak lebih daripada itu.
Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri warned that stern action will be taken against businesses that fail to comply with the ruling. Still to come, Putrajaya wrapping up discussions on toll cut review. The government is in the final stages of reviewing the 18% toll cut on plus highways implemented by the Pakatan Harapan PH administration. Minister in Prime Minister's Department in charge of economy, Datuk Seri Mustafa Mohamad, told the Dewan Rakyat today that discussions were being held between various parties, including the Finance and Works Ministries, Public-Private Partnership Unit and bondholders. Datuk Seri Mustafa said the review was aimed at improving the agreement, adding that he was unable to provide more details as discussions were ongoing.
Cadangan struktur semula syarikat PLUS dan sedang diteliti oleh beberapa pihak, termasuklah Kementerian Kewangan, Kementerian Kerja Raya dan Unit Kerjasama Awam Swasta UKAS Jabatan Perdana Menteri. Memorandum Jamaah Menteri bersama akan disediakan dalam masa terdekat dan keputusan ianya akan dirujuk kepada Jemaah Menteri dan keputusan akan sewajarnya akan dibuat.
Datuk Seri Mustafa added that the PH government had said highway users would save 1.11 billion ringgit until the 31st of December 2038 and the government up to 43 billion ringgit. Motorists plying highways managed by Plus Malaysia Berhad had been enjoying an 18% reduction in toll rates since the 31st of January. The highways are the new Klang Valley Expressway, Seremban Port Dickson Highway, North-South Expressway Central Link, Malaysia-Singapore Second Link, East Coast Expressway Phase 2, Butterworth-Kulim Expressway and the Penang Bridge. Now, in conjunction with the Merdeka Month and National Day celebrations, the Communications and Multimedia Ministry has created #MomentNegaraku to encourage the public to share their most beautiful experiences as Malaysians on their social media accounts, including on Twitter, Facebook and also Instagram. The photos or videos can be shared beginning today.
Kita mencadangkan supaya masing-masing secara individu atau kumpulan ambil gambar atau buat video pendek tentang apa saja momen yang paling dia cherish, momen terindah sebagai rakyat Malaysia. Boleh kata contohnya makan bersama kat kedai mamak atau dia memenangi sesuatu kejohanan atau dia pasang bendera untuk meraihkan hari kemerdekaan atau dia menyanyi lagu tertentu, apa saja yang dia rasa itulah saat paling indah sebagai rakyat Malaysia, dan kongsikan dalam media sosial. Boleh dalam bentuk Twitter atau klip video pendek, upload dalam Twitter atau di Insta atau di Facebook atau di YouTube, dan kongsikan dan guna hashtag Momen Negaraku.
Speaking after appearing on RTM's Selamat Pagi Malaysia program today, Datuk Saifuddin called on every Malaysian to fly the Jalo Gemilang as a show of pride of being Malaysians. The Ministry of Education, MOE, denies having links with any parties regarding the online examination for the Ujian Pencapaian Sekolah Rendah Khas UPSRX exam or the Pentaksiran Tingkatan 3 Khas PT3X exam as promoted by a certain portal. MOE clarified the matter after it found both the examinations were being offered by the portal and would be held online in September and October. MOE in a statement clarified that they have cancelled both of the aforementioned examinations for this year as announced by its Minister Dr. Mohammad Radzi Majidin on 15 April. The ministry also said they are not affiliated with the online exams, which are also not managed by the Malaysian Examination Board. Therefore, action has been taken towards the portal for violation of the Education Act 1996, Act 550. MOE further advised the public, especially parents or guardians of Year 6 pupils and Form 3 students to refer to the official ministry's portal to obtain accurate and legitimate information on exams conducted. Still to come, New Zealand gives Christchurch killer a life sentence. Details right after this. New Zealand mosque gunman Brenton Tarrant was sentenced to life in prison without parole for the massacre of 51 Muslim worshippers, with a judge calling him wicked and inhuman. As the sentence was read out, there was jubilation outside the courtroom with crowds cheering and singing the national anthem. Judge Cameron Mendes said Tarrant's warped ideology and base hatred led the Australian white supremacists to murder defenceless men, women and children last year in New Zealand's worst terror attack. The judge solemnly read out the names of those Tarrant executed in his live-streamed rampage and recounted in forensic detail how he shot the wounded as they pleaded for help on 15 March last year. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, who was praised for her compassionate and decisive response to the shootings, also welcomed the sentence. She also expressed hope that members of the country's traumatized Muslim community feel that the nation stands united behind them. Tarrant sparked global revulsion when he rampaged through two Christchurch mosques for 20 minutes during Friday prayers. He had admitted 51 charges of the murder, 40 of attempted murder, and 1 terrorism over the attacks after reversing an initial not guilty plea. Officials said rescue workers in Afghanistan searched for survivors of flash floods that killed more than 100 people and destroyed hundreds of houses near Kabul. Troops pulled dozens of victims from the rubble of collapsed buildings in Charikar, capital of Parwan province, after torrential overnight rains fueled fierce floods that swept through the city. Officials and witnesses said many children were among the dead. Afghanistan's State Ministry for Disaster Management said the death toll from the floods had risen to 100, with about 100 other people injured and nearly 500 houses destroyed. In parts of Charikar, anxious residents gathered to see if rescue workers using heavy machinery would be able to pull loved ones from the wreckage. Many residents stood on rooftops under continued heavy rain, holding on to their salvaged belongings. Flash floods were also reported in other provinces, including Nangarhar, Panjshir, Wardak, Logar, Paktika, and Kapisa. Torrential downpours and flash floods kill scores of people annually in Afghanistan. Many poorly built homes, mostly in rural areas, are at risk of collapse during the rains in the impoverished country. The presidential palace, meanwhile, in a statement said Afghan President Ashraf Ghani had ordered emergency relief to be sent to Charikar. Yemen's southern separatists said they had withdrawn from talks over a Saudi-sponsored power-sharing deal with the internationally recognized government in the latest setback for the troubled process. The Southern Transitional Council, STC, said in a statement that it had sent a letter to the Saudi authorities confirming the suspension of its participation in the ongoing consultations to implement the agreement. The Riyadh Agreement, which was struck late last year, was designed to mend the rift between allies in the war against rebels who have seized much of Yemen's north. But the on-again, off-again process saw the STC proclaim self-governance in the south in April, only to abandon that stance last month and pledge to implement the stalled peace deal. The separatists said that their decision to pull out of the talks was due to ongoing military escalation in the Flashpoint province of Abyan and the rupture of an agreed ceasefire. They also complained about the failure to pay public sector salaries and a collapse of services in the south, a bugbear that helped trigger the declaration of self-rule in April. The breakdown between the STC and the government has complicated the long and separate conflict between the Saudi-led military coalition and the Iran-aligned rebels who control the capital, Sana'a. Tehran and the United Nations nuclear watchdog said that they had reached an agreement to allow the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, the access it has requested to 2 sites in Iran. The 2 sites, in a joint statement, said Iran is voluntarily providing the IAEA with access to the 2 locations specified by the IAEA and added that they had agreed on dates for the access and the verification activities there.
Hello everybody. Hello. It's very good to see you.
IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi travelled to Tehran this week in the Argentine's first visit there since taking on the top post at the agency last year. On Tuesday, Iran's nuclear body said it held constructive talks with Grossi at a time of increased tensions over a US bid to reimpose UN sanctions. In the statement issued by the IAEA, the 2 sides said the agreement followed intensive bilateral consultations and that the IAEA had no further access requests. The IAEA monitors Iranian atomic activities on the ground with a 2015 landmark accord curbing Tehran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. The agreement has been faltering since US President Donald Trump pulled out of it in 2018 and reimposed sanctions with remaining participants, China, Britain, France, Germany and Russia struggling to save it. Access to the 2 disputed cities had been blocked for months, prompting a diplomatic row. Meanwhile, after meeting Grossi, head of Iran's atomic agency, Ali Akbar Salehi, said a new chapter had started.
Also in terms of the non
10 members of India's dwindling Great Andamanese tribe have tested positive for COVID-19, fueling concerns about the safety of the group and other indigenous people in the remote archipelago. Out of the 10, 6 have recovered and have been put in home quarantine, while the rest are undergoing treatment in a local hospital. Just over 50 Great Andamanese people survived today and live on to tiny Strait Island, where the Indian government looks after their food and shelter. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands, a chain of islands in the Indian Ocean with a population of some 400,000, has reported 2,268 coronavirus cases so far, with 37 deaths. Indian authorities sent a team of health officials to Strait Island on Sunday after 6 members of the tribe tested positive in the archipelago's capital, Port Blair, recently. Some of the tribe's members travelled to Port Blair, where they have government jobs. Abhijit Ray, a senior health officer in charge of the disease management in the Andaman, said the team tested 37 samples and 4 members of the Great Andamanese tribe were found to be positive and are currently admitted in hospital. Sanjeev Mittal, a senior government officer for tribal welfare, meanwhile told AFP authorities were doing their best to keep all the members safe and healthy. Coming up in sports. sports, Naomi Osaka withdraws from WTA semi-final over Blake shooting. Celtic was stunned by Ferencvaros in the second round of Champions League qualifying, losing 2-1 in Glasgow. Tokmak Nguyen's second-half goal sends the Hungarian side through and consigned the Scottish champions to a third season in a row without reaching the group stage. A superb strike from David Shiger put 2005 that the Scottish club were eliminated from the competition at the qualifying stage, doing so against Armedia Bratislava on that occasion.
It's actually a clearance. A clearance goes in behind El Hamid.
England left-back Ben Chilwell became Chelsea's third high-profile signing of the summer, leaving Leicester for a fee reported to be around £50 million. Chilwell's arrival at Stamford Bridge on a 5-year deal follows the signings of Hakim Ziyech and Timo Werner from Ajax and RB Leipzig, with more business expected before the transfer window closes. While neither Chelsea nor Leicester officially disclosed the sum paid for Chilwell, the Foxes said on their website it was one of the largest transfer fees ever received by the club. Leicester Academy product Chilwell, who has 11 England caps, made his debut for the Foxes in October 2015 and made 123 appearances for the club. Chelsea have been heavily linked with the swoop for PSG's veteran Brazil defender Thiago Silva, while Bayer Leverkusen's Kai Havertz is still in line to make the switch to Stamford Bridge. Owner Roman Abramovich's staunch backing has put Chelsea in a strong position in the transfer market, with the club able to offset the effects of the COVID-19 better than many other clubs. Moving on to tennis, Japan's Naomi Osaka withdrew from her WTA Western and Southern Open semi-final match in New York to protest the police shooting of an unarmed black man in Wisconsin. Osaka, a two-time Grand Slam champion, was to have faced Belgian Alyssa Mertens in the same quarantine bubble, where the US Open will be played starting today. In a statement posted in Twitter, Naomi said she is a black woman first, then an athlete, adding that as a black woman, she felt there are much more important matters at hand that need immediate attention rather than watching her play tennis. Her move comes in the wake of African-American Jacob Blake being shot on Sunday in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and the NBA's Milwaukee Bucks boycotting their scheduled playoff game on Wednesday. All NBA playoff games Wednesday were eventually postponed, and Major League Baseball and women's NBA clubs followed suit before Osaka became the trailblazer in tennis. Blake was shot 7 times in the back by police as he attempted to get into a car containing his 3 children. That concludes this evening's news at 10. In our top story, government prepares next phase of economic strengthening. Join us again at 12:30 tomorrow afternoon. Till then, I'm Brendan Lepol. Stay tuned to Saluran Berita RTM and have a pleasant evening. Good night.